In today's world of the inclusive classroom, teachers are challenged to create a safe, engaging, and productive learning environment for a very diverse group of students. The push for successful inclusion for students with disabilities is heading in the right direction. The U.S. Department of Education says 61% of students with disabilities spend 80 to 100% of their time in a regular classroom. But with all these unique learners, a teacher will inevitably come into situations where they feel the need to discuss a student's disability, special needs, or behavior to the rest of the class. The New York State United Teachers Union found that people lack accurate information about disabilities. This lack of information hampers their understanding not only of the disabilities, but the people who have them. Their survey went on to identify 5 concepts for teachers to include in classroom discussions. The first is awareness. Students often make fun of people with disabilities because they simply don't understand them. Informing students about disabilities is the first step. The next is similarity. Diverse students are more alike than you think, and teachers should emphasize similarities. And acceptance. Teachers should foster positive attitudes towards everyone in class. Uniqueness. Teachers should also discuss how diversity makes a student population unique. And finally, inclusion. Actually telling kids about the importance of inclusion, not only for the students with disabilities, but for everyone else as well. But jumping into a blanket conversation about a student's disabilities or medical issues isn't an easy thing to do. There are a lot of things to consider, but there is a natural jumping off point.
The number one rule is, first of all, is parent permission. And then that's where I turn to my parents and I say, I've got this kiddo or your kiddo who's in this classroom, and this is what the general makeup of the classroom is. And these are some of the things that we're seeing in the classroom. And I'd like to be able to share some of the unique abilities that your student has with the other students so that they know what to expect. So they know that when they hear him talking in a different voice, or when they hear him getting anxious and starting to walk around the classroom or flapping or doing different types of things, that those are normal behaviors for him and why.
When you're in a basically general ed class and you're only mainstreaming 1 or 2 kids at a time, I think you ought to start with the parent before school starts, or the kid as soon as you get them in, and then make that parent phone call and say, what do you think about us? You think that's going to be more harmful or helpful to your students? So I'd say case by case.
It's important to know that every situation is different, and parents' reactions, well, they may vary.
And I've never had a parent that hasn't been willing to give permission for us to go into the classroom, and sit down and talk about things.
I think parents just want their kid to be treated like every other kid. I really do. I can't see a situation where a parent would say, by the way, address your whole class at the beginning of they always want the teachers to know. If there's like a child coming over from 8th grade who the high school teachers don't know, and I know this kid's coming in, I might meet with the parent before school starts, like end of August, and they might say, hey, I really need you to let these teachers know they've got A, B, and C. So they're ready on day 1, but not with the other kids.
And there are other things to consider too, depending on familiarity, the severity of the disability, and the comfort level with communication, and also the grade level of the class you're in.
Fortunately, by the time we get to this point in the high school, the kids have kind of grown up around this student. So some of them may be a little bit familiar to them, but not everyone. And you'll have some kids that transfer in that may not know the student, that may not be familiar with their mannerisms and their actions and their voice and those different types of things.
By the time the kids hit high school, they kind of know each other. They kind of know, oh yeah, so-and-so's been doing this since 3rd grade or whatever. So most of the time, it just speaks for itself. You don't have to say anything. The kids at this point are pretty good about accepting another person, unless that disability happens to infringe upon their space or their whatever. I don't typically have a conversation with the kids about another kid. I'll just, maybe when the kid's having a blow up and they're out in the hall or something, you might say, you know what, everybody's got their, little quirks, and he's just working one of his quirks out right now.
If the parents are in agreement about discussing a disability to the class, then it's time to take the next step.
So then it's really just a matter of, number one, after getting the parent permission, I get the student's permission. and I'll ask the student, and I'll say, okay, I want to sit down and talk with the class about you and talk about what some of your unique abilities are, what makes you who you are. And I ask them, would they like to be in the classroom when that happens, or would they prefer not to be in the classroom when that happens? And I've had students do both. I've had some students that are just more comfortable, like, hey, let me go shoot hoops, you can go talk about me and do it, you know, I don't want to be there. And I've had other kids that are like, no, I want to be there, you know, because they might be able to provide some valuable input to the conversation.
And still other students may not be willing to share or even have an understanding of the situation.
You know, sometimes even for my lowest kids, they don't understand that they're different. They really don't. You know, they see that they're just like everybody else. That's not how everybody else perceives them. But they don't always realize that they're different.
Some of them don't even want to be caught walking into my classroom or people knowing that they have me in class. And some are like, yep, got a learning disability and I'm getting the help I need. It's a confidence. Or even a self-awareness. Sometimes the kids don't even really still get yet what it is that they're working with and don't realize how different they are from the other kids.
Davison High School seniors Savannah Rowe and Davon Flowers are students with disabilities who have encountered these situations throughout the years.
I was born with a heart defect, 3 operations. Not all of them are in a row, of course, but when I came out of my mom's, the doctor said my heart wasn't working right. I have a problem with reading, and my rights and my lefts, I can't tell them apart, even though I'm kind of working on that. And my writing.
I have a problem with my back. I have arthritis in my back, and I have a little breathing problem because when I was a little kid, I couldn't breathe, so they had to do surgery to make me be able to breathe. It's pretty tough on me. I'm not able to play, and I love playing football and basketball, but I'm not able to keep up with the other kids because of it.
Both students say that because they're seniors now, they're not asked often to talk about their disabilities, but they do support teachers who would like to share with the class.
I would feel it would be good because then they don't have to look at me weird. They don't have to say like, oh, she talks funny and make fun of me for that. But if they know that I have a heart defect and I can't say or spell anything, then they'll say like, okay.
Yeah, I'll be okay with it. It really doesn't affect me how I learn in the classroom or anything.
And that's when it's time to discuss with the class.
I think honesty at that point is the best thing, you know. So once you've gotten the parents' permission and the students' permission and you're sitting down and you're having that conversation, you know, and you want to talk about, you know, this is what you might see. These are some of the behaviors that you might see in class. These are some of the little quirks that you might see, especially if it's a student that might have a behavioral meltdown. You know, what my expectations for the rest of the classroom is during that time. You know, it's just, it tends to be a real good open exchange.
Students may surprise you in open conversations. They may tell you about experiences they have in their family lives or even here at school. The object is to bring understanding and even facilitate positive classroom and personal relationships for everyone. Teachers may also choose to have the students with them when they speak, or bring in a special ed teacher or even an expert to address the class.
The gym teacher asked me to come in and to speak because she had 2 very low-functioning boys with autism. And here I was in the auditorium with a very large group of kids. And it was very positive. It was very uplifting, the stories that were shared, the questions that were asked, even the input that the other students could provide based on their own personal experiences. There was nothing negative that came out of the interactions or the communication time that we had. It was truly a positive.
Here are some other things to know about talking to your class about students with disabilities. Comfortable classroom communities are based on respect and acceptance. Learning how to interact with students with disabilities in classrooms carries over to the outside world. Interactions between students with disabilities and others rarely happen on their own. Sometimes a teacher facilitating them is the only way communication begins. Teachers can incorporate information about disabilities into their curriculum, even put students with disabilities into reading materials or even math problems. And better acceptance can help other students better understand accommodations they may be seeing for other students and even assistive technology they may come across. Talking to your class about students with disabilities may become a necessity to foster an inclusive classroom. There are steps to take and lots of considerations you must make, but in the end, acceptance and creating a successful learning environment for all students is the goal.
Parents, I think, are willing to have you talk about their students as long as it's in a positive light and knowing that the ultimate goal is a higher level of acceptance.